Our scripture today. Our scripture is from Mark chapter 10. And if you want to follow along, that's great. As you're thinking of it, as you're looking it up, I want you to ask a couple questions to yourself. What would you risk for something big to happen in your life? What would you risk for the chance to meet somebody who would just change your whole world? Because the guy in the story today had to ask that question to himself. We're going to read from verse 46 of chapter 10 in the book of Mark. Then they came to Jericho. As Jesus and his disciples, together with a large crowd, were leaving the city, a blind man, Bartimaeus, that is, the son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside begging. When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout, "Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me." Many rebuked him and told him to be quiet. But he shouted all the more, "Son of David, have mercy on me." Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." So they called to the blind man, "Cheer up, on your feet, he's calling you." Throwing his cloak aside, he jumped to his feet and came to Jesus. "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus asked him. The blind man said, "Rabbi, I want to see." "Go," said Jesus, "your faith has healed you." Immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus along the road. This is the word of the Lord. Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus, a.k.a. Blind Bart, because everybody knew Bart. He's a blind beggar. He is a non-productive member of society. He occupies the lowest rung on society's ladder. Every day he goes off to work to be beside this bustling highway that goes from Jericho all the way to Jerusalem. It's 15 miles, but right outside the city, there's lots of people that move that way. Every day he takes off his cloak, which is his bed covering that keeps him warm at night and is kind of his coat during the day, and he lays it out right along the road. And he sits on it to beg people for money. And every day he is knee-high to everybody who walks by. And that is his lot in life. Of course, Bart is up on current events because, the eyes don't work, but the ears work. And you hear things. And he's heard whispers, just whispers of Jesus. Because there's Jesus. He's this traveling rabbi. And he heals people. Well, who does he heal, right? He heals people that don't walk. He heals people who don't talk. And people who have other types of problems. And most importantly, he heals blind people. Blind people like he is. He imagines, what if he would ever meet this Jesus? A chance meeting, of course. But what if he ever met him? What would he do? Maybe he's got his whole spiel in his head, like, I would say this to him. But you're just kidding yourself, right? These people don't come around. He's a blind person. And even if he came around, would he notice him, right? It can't be true, these whispers anyways. Bart is just going to live the rest of his life as a non-productive member of society, begging knee-high to everybody. And that's as good as it's going to get for him. There is no way out for him. But then, Jesus is coming his way. You hear it. But there's two problems. Two problems in the story. One is, it's very loud. Jesus is traveling with a huge crowd because he's pretty popular. You heal a couple people, the word gets out. You can't walk just by yourself anymore. There's lots of people. Also, it's Passover week next week. There's lots of people going to Jerusalem. We've got gridlock out on the highway. There's lots of people. It's loud. Bart is going to have to yell loud Loudly, sorry. He is going to have to yell loudly to get Jesus to notice him. So he starts. He goes, "Hey, Jesus, blind guy over here, have mercy on me." Well, it says that he started shouting, and it doesn't say that he stopped shouting. He kept going. He said, hey, Jesus, I'm over here. Notice me, have mercy on me. Well, that just brings up the second problem. See, there's the security posse that's around Jesus, the crowd. Jesus had told his disciples not long ago that he was going to Jerusalem, and he was going to be turned over to the chief priests, and he was going to die. And these guys are, "Well, not on my watch. This is not going to happen. Jesus is too important." So I am sure that this security posse got together and said, anybody who's going to take Jesus or cause distractions, they are just going to get dealt with. We're not going to have that. So Bart is yelling, "Jesus!" And he is so loud, and he is ticking off these security team people. And you can imagine, in my head, I picture these guys in the black robes and the sunglasses, and they're just really big, and they're just go, "Hey, you just don't know what you're doing here. Jesus is important. He doesn't have time for the likes of you, so just pipe down." Jesus is passing by. And Bart's only opportunity to be healed is slowly passing by. The door of opportunity is shutting. And what does Bart do then? But hold on a second. As I read this story, I couldn't help but think of our visioning process. The visioning process we're going through, that we're talking about, that we are going to living in community and living out the story. And I started thinking of, how can we as a church encourage people like blind Bart to encounter Jesus? How can we encourage that? Not put roadblocks up and barriers, but to encourage them to come and meet Jesus. You know, we would never do it on purpose. We would never go out of our way to say, you know what, there's blind people that don't know Jesus and we don't care about them. We would never do that on purpose. But sometimes we get into kind of a programmatic groove, and we focus in on ourselves and we forget about the people outside of the four walls here. And we just don't think about them. And we have things in place that work for us. They do. They are great things, but they're barriers to other people coming to know Jesus. My wife and I were thinking about, which ones, right? A couple years ago, we thought of the nursery. A couple of years ago, there was 2 doors that came in. It wasn't really secure. Some of the things there wasn't a check-in desk. Things were just not. If someone came from the outside of our 4 walls and said, "I got a couple kids here, they're really small. Is there a nursery I can bring them to?" This would not instill comfort in them that I want to bring my kids and have them be cared for here. So there was changes, and the thought was, if someone came from the outside, what can we do to make them feel that it's safe, that these guys know what they're doing, that there's teams of people that are taking care of my kid. And things changed with that perspective of somebody from the outside. That has to happen for every ministry. From Gems and Cadets to Coffee Break to all of our ministries. What if someone not from our church comes in and says, "I want to be a part of this"? I know that the leaders of this church are committed to making sure every ministry has in mind, if we're living out the story, what does that mean for someone who is outside of our 4 walls? I know that is going to happen. And in the next couple months, in this next year, every ministry has to come into a line with what does that mean? And give the vision legs. Faith Church is surrounded by people that have heard whispers of Jesus. And we need to break down the barriers so that they can come into an encounter with Jesus. Because that's the next part of the story.